What happens when Russia and the US military cross paths? Russian security forces have now set foot at Airbase 101 in Niamey, Niger, joining the American troops already stationed there. This development has stirred apprehension within the US. Speculation runs, with some believing Russia's move is planned by African authorities to pressure the US into withdrawal. But is that truly the case? Let's find out. Russian security forces have been deployed to Airbase 101 in Niamey, Niger, where American troops are already stationed. This rare convergence of military forces from two rival nations at a single location has captured the attention of global analysts and policymakers. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin confirmed the presence of Russian troops at the airbase, marking a new phase in the complex power dynamics of the region. The deployment comes amid heightened tensions following a coup in Niger last year, which ousted President Mohamed Bazoum and prompted the junta to reassess its alliances with Western countries. As Niger navigates its new political landscape, the presence of both U.S. and Russian forces at Airbase 101 symbolizes a broader struggle for influence in the Sahel region. This situation has significant implications for regional stability, counterterrorism efforts, and international relations. But what are Russia's intentions? The exact timing and number of Russian troops deployed to Airbase 101 remain unclear. However, their presence has been confirmed by both U.S. and Russian officials. These troops are reportedly housed in a separate compound within the airbase, with strict protocols ensuring they cannot access U.S. forces or equipment. This segregation suggests a cautious approach from both sides to avoid direct interaction and potential conflicts. The nature of the Russian forces at the airbase is also notable. While specifics about the units deployed are not publicly available, they likely include a mix of regular military personnel and private military contractors (PMCs), which Russia has increasingly relied upon in various African countries. This deployment strategy allows Russia to maintain plausible deniability while exerting influence and securing its regional interests. The deployment follows significant political upheaval in Niger. In July last year, a coup led by the Nigerian military ousted President Mohamed Bazoum, who was democratically elected. The junta that seized power has since been realigning Niger's foreign relations, distancing itself from traditional Western allies such as the United States and France. Following the coup, the junta demanded that U.S. and French troops leave their bases in Niger, reflecting a broader trend of African nations reevaluating their post-colonial relationships with Western powers. This shift opened up other global powers, including Russia, to step in and strengthen their influence. Does this highlight Niger's strategic importance? Niger's strategic importance cannot be overstated. Geographically, it is situated in the heart of the Sahel region, a critical area in the fight against Islamist insurgencies linked to groups such as Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. Additionally, Niger is rich in natural resources, particularly uranium, which is a significant factor in global energy markets. For the U.S., Niger has been a pivotal partner in its counterterrorism efforts in the region. Airbase 101, located in the capital, Niamey, and Airbase 201 in Agadez, have been crucial for launching drone operations and other military activities aimed at destabilizing terrorist networks. Russian forces at Airbase 101 now complicate these operations and introduce new risks and uncertainties. For the U.S., do Russia's actions matter? U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin confirmed the presence of Russian troops at Airbase 101. This acknowledgement underscores the seriousness with which the U.S. views this development. In response, some U.S. troops have been relocated from Airbase 101 to Airbase 201 in Agadez, highlighting a strategic repositioning to maintain operational security and effectiveness. This movement reflects broader concerns within the U.S. defense community about the implications of a Russian presence so close to American forces. The potential for espionage, intelligence leaks, and unintended military confrontations necessitates heightened vigilance and operational adjustments. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. From the Russian perspective, this deployment is part of a broader strategy to deepen military and political ties with African nations. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated that Russia is actively developing military relations with various countries, reflecting a long-term vision of establishing a stronger presence in Africa. Russia's strategy in Africa has included offering military training, supplying arms, and deploying PMCs to support friendly regimes and secure strategic assets. This approach has allowed Russia to gain footholds in countries like the Central African Republic, Sudan, and now Niger. What implications will this have for regional and global power dynamics? The presence of Russian and US troops at the same airbase is a stark reminder of the shifting geopolitical landscape in the Sahel and beyond. It highlights Niger's role as a geopolitical fault line, where the interests of major global powers intersect and often clash. This development complicates the US counterterrorism strategy in the region. The presence of Russian troops raises the risk of direct or indirect confrontations and challenges the efficacy of ongoing military operations against jihadist groups. Moreover, it signals a potential decline in US influence in a region where it has invested significant resources. For Russia, the deployment to Niger represents an opportunity to expand its influence in Africa, counter Western presence, and gain access to valuable resources. It also aligns with Moscow's broader strategy of positioning itself as an alternative partner for African nations disillusioned with Western interventions. The coexistence of Russian and US forces at Airbase 101 opens up several possible scenarios. In a best-case scenario, the two militaries might find ways to coexist without confrontation, focusing on their respective missions and avoiding actions that could escalate tensions. This would require robust communication channels and clear rules of engagement. However, the potential for confrontation cannot be ignored. Incidents of miscommunication, misunderstandings, or deliberate provocations could quickly escalate into broader conflicts. Both sides must navigate this precarious situation carefully, balancing their strategic objectives with maintaining regional stability. And how would this affect Africa? Beyond Niger, the dual presence of Russian and US troops has significant implications for the broader Sahel region. It could lead to a realignment of regional alliances, with other countries in the Sahel and West Africa reassessing their relationships with major global powers. This dynamic could either stabilize or further destabilize the region, depending on how it is managed. While we will hear more from the stakeholders as time passes, what immediate reaction was given? The deployment of Russian forces to Airbase 101 in Niamey, Niger, has elicited immediate and varied reactions from key stakeholders, including the United States government, the Kremlin, and international observers. The confirmation of Russian troops at Airbase 101 by the U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has triggered a swift and strategic response from the United States. Given the sensitive nature of military operations and intelligence activities at the base, the U.S. government is deeply concerned about the implications of having Russian forces near American troops. In response to the Russian deployment, the U.S. has relocated some of its troops from Airbase 101 to Airbase 201 in Agadez. This move is strategic, aimed at maintaining operational security and minimizing the risk of confrontations or intelligence compromises. Airbase 201, located in central Niger, is a critical hub for U.S. drone operations against terrorist groups in the Sahel region. By consolidating forces at this base, the U.S. can better safeguard its assets and continue its counterterrorism mission with reduced interference. The proximity of Russian and U.S. forces raises significant concerns about security and espionage. The U.S. military is particularly wary of potential intelligence leaks and the risk of Russian operatives gaining insights into American military tactics, technology, and operations. This heightened state of alert necessitates increased vigilance and tighter security protocols to protect sensitive information and equipment. The U.S. State Department has likely engaged in diplomatic communications with both Niger's junta and Russian officials to address this new development. These communications aim to establish ground rules for interactions at Airbase 101, reduce the risk of accidental confrontations, and reaffirm U.S. concerns about the security implications of the Russian presence. Publicly, the U.S. government has highlighted its commitment to maintaining stability and security in Niger and the broader Sahel region. Now, the question is how the world reacted to it. The deployment has also drawn attention from other major global powers, including China and the European Union. These actors closely monitor the situation, as it could signal shifts in regional alliances and power dynamics. China's substantial economic interests in Africa have long been a cornerstone of its global strategy. As the continent continues to emerge as a significant player in the global economy, China has strategically positioned itself as a key partner, investing heavily in infrastructure development and resource extraction projects across various African nations. This investment serves multiple purposes for China, including securing access to vital resources, opening new markets for its goods and services, and enhancing its geopolitical influence. However, despite its economic dominance, China has historically shied away from direct military involvement in African conflicts. Instead, it has focused on building economic and diplomatic ties to advance its interests. Therefore, any escalation of instability in the region could potentially jeopardize China's investments and disrupt its carefully laid plans. The recent presence of both Russian and US forces in Niger presents a new dynamic that could complicate matters for China. While China's relationship with Russia has strengthened in recent years, with both countries finding common ground on various international issues, including opposition to Western hegemony, China might initially perceive the increased Russian presence in Africa as a potential challenge. However, given the close alignment of interests between China and Russia, particularly in countering US influence, the author viewed Russia's involvement as complementary rather than adversarial. The convergence of Russian and Chinese interests in Africa could signal a broader shift in the geopolitical landscape, where the two powers increasingly collaborate to secure their respective interests on the continent. This alignment could further marginalize the United States, which has traditionally been a dominant player in African affairs. The growing partnership between Russia and China in Africa poses a significant challenge for the United States. As its rivals strengthen their presence and influence on the continent, the US risks losing its strategic foothold and facing increased competition for resources and markets. Moreover, the potential for enhanced cooperation between African nations and China and Russia could further diminish US influence in shaping regional dynamics. While China reacts in a way Africa wouldn't mind, Europe has something else to say. The European Union, with France at the forefront, has a deep-seated interest in maintaining stability in the Sahel region. France, in particular, has a significant historical and military presence in West Africa, where it has conducted numerous operations aimed at combating Islamist insurgencies and bolstering the capacities of local governments. These efforts align with broader EU objectives of promoting regional security, development, and governance. However, the recent introduction of Russian forces into Niger presents a new and complex challenge for France and the EU. Unlike traditional Western allies, Russia's involvement in Africa often diverges from established norms and objectives. While France has primarily focused on counter-terrorism and capacity-building efforts, Russia's motivations in the region may differ, potentially introducing conflicting interests and tactics. For France, the presence of Russian forces in Niger requires a reassessment of its strategic calculus. It must navigate the delicate balance between addressing security threats in the Sahel and managing competition dynamics with a rival power. This includes considerations of how Russian activities may impact regional stability, governance structures, and the effectiveness of ongoing counterinsurgency efforts. Furthermore, introducing Russian forces could complicate diplomatic efforts and coordination among international actors operating in the Sahel. As a key EU member state, France may seek to engage in dialogue with Russia to understand its objectives and explore potential areas of cooperation. However, differences in approach and priorities may hinder effective collaboration, leading to increased complexity in addressing shared security challenges. And what do international communities have to say? The deployment of Russian forces in Niger has prompted responses from various international organizations, including the United Nations (UN) and the African Union (AU). Both organizations have emphasized the importance of diplomatic solutions and have cautioned against actions that could exacerbate tensions or escalate into conflict. The United Nations, in particular, has called for restraint and dialogue among all parties involved. Recognizing the complexities of the situation and the potential implications for regional stability, the UN has underscored the importance of prioritizing the security and stability of the Sahel region. This call for restraint echoes the broader diplomatic principles of the UN, which seeks to prevent conflicts and promote peaceful resolutions to disputes. Similarly, the African Union has expressed concerns about the deployment of Russian forces in Niger and has called for dialogue to address any underlying issues. As a regional organization, the AU promotes African peace and security. Its response underscores the need for African-led solutions to regional challenges and the importance of preserving stability in the Sahel. The UN and the AU's responses highlight the significance of multilateral cooperation and diplomacy in addressing complex security dynamics. By advocating for dialogue and restraint, these organizations seek to mitigate the risk of escalation and create opportunities for peaceful resolution. Additionally, their involvement underscores the broader international interest in ensuring stability and security in the Sahel region, recognizing its implications for global peace and security. What about regional reactions? Within the Sahel region, the reactions are mixed. Some governments may view the Russian presence as a counterbalance to Western influence, potentially opening new avenues for military cooperation and support. Others, however, are concerned about the implications for regional security and the potential for increased conflict. Countries like Nigeria and Mali, which are directly affected by the instability in Niger, are particularly attentive to these developments. The deployment of Russian forces in Niger could lead to regional realignments as countries reassess their alliances and strategic partnerships. Some Sahelian nations might seek closer ties with Russia, viewing it as a valuable partner in their security efforts. Conversely, others may double down on their cooperation with Western powers, fearing the consequences of increased Russian influence. An important question is, was this decision made based on Africa's will? It's plausible that the decision to deploy Russian forces to Niger aligns with Africa's interests, particularly those of Niger and potentially other African nations. The decision by African countries like Niger to welcome the presence of Russian forces can indeed be seen as a strategic move to assert sovereignty and reduce reliance on Western powers, particularly the United States, in matters of security and defense. By diversifying diplomatic and military alliances, African nations aim to balance competing interests and assert greater autonomy in foreign policy decision-making. The introduction of Russian forces serves as a means to counterbalance the predominant influence of Western powers, fostering a more multipolar geopolitical environment that empowers African nations with increased negotiating leverage and diminishes external interference. Moreover, collaboration with Russia on security issues can enhance Africa's ability to address internal and external threats, such as terrorism and insurgency, contributing significantly to regional stability. This partnership could also unlock economic opportunities, including investments in infrastructure projects, vital for bolstering economic growth and development across the continent. From a strategic standpoint, the decision to invite Russian forces to Niger signals Africa's intention to emerge as a significant player in shaping international affairs. It underscores Africa's willingness to engage with multiple global powers and assert its role in the broader geopolitical landscape. While the move aligns with Russia's strategic interests, it reflects Africa's aspirations to diversify alliances and assert sovereignty amidst evolving geopolitical dynamics. For Niger, the presence of both Russian and US troops has significant long-term implications. The country must navigate its relationships with these powerful actors carefully, balancing the need for security and economic support with the risks of becoming a battleground for global powers. The decisions made by Niger's leadership in the coming months and years will shape the country's future and influence its role in the region. The new military junta faces the challenge of maintaining internal stability while managing external pressures from Western and Russian influences. How they balance these relationships will determine whether Niger can achieve its strategic objectives without becoming further destabilized by external forces. In the best-case scenario, Russia and the United States could prioritize diplomacy and cooperation to de-escalate tensions and find common ground in addressing shared security challenges. This scenario would involve establishing clear communication channels, implementing confidence-building measures, and engaging in dialogue to manage differences and mitigate the risk of conflict. Another scenario involves continuing the current strategic competition between Russia and the United States, characterized by indirect confrontations, proxy conflicts, and efforts to undermine each other's regional influence. Africa does not want the US to stay, so the best scenario is that Russia stays and the US leaves. Do you think the US must leave? What would happen if it didn't? Will Africa push it out? Let us know in the comment section how Africa can successfully do it. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.